I like helping people get more from Magento 2. I have a bit of an obsession with orange things and collecting badges. Yeah, it's me in a nutshell, really. Today's talk is about indexing, and the aims are to give you a solid understanding about them, outline the impact they can have on storefront performance, and show you, we're going to do basically a live demo where I run through how the update on schedule mode works. So wish me luck. Again, as with yesterday, there's plenty of Star Wars stuff, so if you're not a fan, I apologize in advance. Okay, so first off, what is an index? So I decided to Google this because I'm lazy. It is collecting, parsing, and storing data to facilitate fast and accurate information retrieval. Or, as I like to put it, it's just another form of caching, but where data is transformed during the process. So why does Magento use indexing? Essentially, again, as with caching yesterday, there's a large feature set. There's lots of different types of data. If we query raw data in that form, it takes a long time. It's not good for performance, so data is indexed into smaller, more readable chunks, essentially. So without indexing, you store from performance basically like this. We have to make what we would call on-the-fly calculations all the time. So a little bit of terminology. First, a dictionary. This is the raw data. This is the MySQL tables in Magento where, let's say you're editing a product and you're updating price, whatever. These are the raw tables where that data lives. The index, this is the re-representation of the data in another table. And finally, the indexer, this is the process that is used to take the dictionary data and create an index. So in Magento's terminology, that's the code that performs the indexing process. So what kind of data does Magento index? Quite a lot, but I'm just going to cover a few ones here, mainly product related. So there's prices, inventory, product attribute data for things like the layer navigation, product category associations, and obviously a lot more. But if you want to have a look on DevDocs. Let's have a little bit of a deeper dig into pricing as an example. So when you're looking at a product on the front end, all that really matters to the customer is that they see the final price in most cases. But that can be impacted by the base price, if there's a special price, whether that special price has a start and end date. There could be tiered pricing, customer group pricing. You might have catalog price rules. There are many things that can impact what price is shown. All of those things can also be set per website as well. And then consider more complex product types. We've got configurable, grouped, bundles. These all have minimum and maximum prices that need to be calculated too. So without indexing that data, there's expensive queries on the fly calculations. Let's have a look at inventory then. So again, all the customer needs to know is whether they can buy it, essentially. Is the product saleable? This impacted, again, by multiple things. So the actual quantity itself. You may have back orders enabled. You might have a minimum order quantity. So you might have 5 in stock, but the minimum order quantity is 10. So technically, it's not in stock at that point. And obviously, with Magento inventory, or probably better known as MSI, you've now got things like sources and stocks as well to consider. So the point there is, yeah, there's a lot of data that needs to be indexed, essentially. So let's have a look at the 2 indexing modes that Magento gives us. We have update on save and update on schedule. We'll start with save. So this is the default method. When you install Magento, this is what's enabled by default. So what happens with this mode? Anytime you save an entity, and to save me saying entity for the rest of the talk, I'm just going to refer to products from here on out. Indexes aren't just for products, but it's just going to be easier and a better way to explain. So if you save a product, the index is run straight away. So not only that, when you save a product, the indexes for every single product in the catalog are refreshed. So that might sound fine in theory, but if you have a large catalog, it can really hamper performance. And worse still, reindexing a product, saving a product and reindexing it clears its full page cache entry. So to wrap all that up, if you have update on save enabled and you save one product in the admin panel, you've just cleared the full page cache for every single product on your website. And because products are linked to categories, and if you refresh a product, it also refreshes the index for that category, you'll also clear the cache for every single category on your storefront too. So by saving one product in the admin, you've basically cleared the entire cache for the whole of your website. So that is, I'm going to use this again, nice representation of the experience. So with that in mind, let's have a look at update on schedule. So with this mode, indexes are run via scheduled tasks, so cron, rather than immediately after you've saved a product. It's also known as partial or background reindexing. It's not particularly new. It was introduced back in Magento 1, only for Enterprise, or now known as Commerce Edition 1.13. In Magento 2, it's been available since 2.0 for both open source and commerce. So it aims to remedy the issues caused by update on save by indexing just the data that's been changed. So if you save a product in the admin, that product record gets logged for change, and that's the only record that's removed from full-page cache. So it's a lot better. Okay, so that's all well and good. We could leave it there. We just say we're going to use update on schedule. Again, yeah, done. But what happens if you have issues? What happens if something doesn't update? I'm sure everyone's had or seen an instance where somebody saved something in the admin panel and they've expected to see it on the storefront, but it hasn't updated. So this might be the first reaction. I'm going to go through a little scenario to highlight, to wrap this up. So we've got a quote from a merchant here. So we're going to poke fun at developers too in a minute. So I added our most important product to a new category and it's not updated on the storefront. And an important note here is it doesn't matter which product was updated, it's always the most important one. So what could the issue be? Perhaps the admin user hasn't waited for the cron to run. The cron runs every minute by default. You have to potentially give it a minute for it to show up on the storefront. Perhaps your cron isn't configured correctly, or the cron's stuck. Or maybe it's running perfectly fine, but actually you're using varnish for full-page cache, but maybe varnish is misconfigured and the record hasn't been purged. Or perhaps there's an issue with indexing itself, which is what we're going to look at. So, merchant submits a ticket, comes through to a developer, and they say, well, we could just run a manual reindex on the command line. Not a great idea, because we're back with clearing the cache for everything on the site again. And we can't be sure it won't happen again. So yes, you might need to run a full reindex in a particular scenario to appease there's some sort of sale that's just gone live and something's not showing, then fine. You might need to reindex manually to get that working and take the hit of the performance issue, but how do you know it's not going to happen again? We should be looking for a preventative fix, not a reactive one. So let's dig a little deeper into update on schedule. So how does it actually work? So there are 4 or 5 main things, if you like, that play into update on schedule. First one, already mentioned, the schedule tasks, the cron. We've got MySQL triggers. We have changelog database tables, PHP code, and being Magento, there's obviously some XML too. So we'll focus on MySQL triggers and changelog tables. So MySQL triggers, basically, the point I'm going to highlight is that logging a record for reindex on update on schedule actually sits outside of Magento completely. It's all down to these triggers. So when update on schedule is enabled, Magento will add MySQL triggers to the database that will watch for changes to rows, basically. If you turn it off again, the triggers will be removed if you go back to update on save. So if you change a specific piece of information, so let's say stock level for a product, that row in the database will change, and then it will get logged into a changelog table. So all that changelog tables are is basically 2 columns, an auto-increment ID and the ID of the product or the entity that you have changed. And then when the cron runs, it picks these up and then refreshes the indexes for them. And every dictionary table, if you like, will have a changelog table that it puts its records into. and the changelog table is based on the index name, which you'll see in a little bit. So let's have a look at a full workflow example. We're going to look at product inventory. This is kind of the older default catalog inventory, not the newer MSI, but it's still relevant for the example that I want to show. So we're going to start by looking at the database tables that are involved. So the first one is catalog inventory stock item. So this has 26 columns, all about data related to the stock for a particular product. The key column is the product ID column. This is the column that's used, picked up by the changelog table. Probably can't see that too well, but there's just an overview of the table. And here's an example. This here is showing the different triggers. So triggers, quite a few of the indexing modes kind of cross-reference each other. If you change a value in the stock table, it will also update the price and the search indexes too. So that's why there's three. Can't really see it, but there's three different triggers there, and there are triggers for insert, update, and delete. So when records are. Yeah. Okay. Next up is the catalog inventory stock underscore CL table. So catalog inventory underscore stock is the index name. Underscore CL is just the changelog table. So as I said earlier, this contains literally two columns, the author increment column and the entity ID, product ID in our case. And it looks like that. Next, we have the catalog inventory stock status table. So this is the final index table. This is the output of the indexing process. So this only contains 5 columns, not 26, and stock status is the key column here. Again, you can't see it too well, but basically all we were left with is, from memory, if I can read that right, product ID, website ID, can't remember what the next one is because I can't read it, quantity and stock status. Is it in stock or not? Yes or no, 1 or 0, just a Boolean value. Finally, we've got mview state. This is a table that manages the whole of update on schedule in its entirety. So it contains, I'll just switch to it, contains all the different indexes, whether there's a mode column that says enabled or disabled as to whether it's using update on save or update on schedule. The other key column at the end is the version ID here. So this has the value of the last version from the changelog table that's been reindexed, basically. Yeah, and again, there's just another reference to the changelog table name. So let's have a little bit of a demo. There is a disclaimer here, because I'm about to do something very, very stupid that you should not do, especially on a production environment. Okay. So, going to use a bit of an example. This is product ID 1 in the database and sample data. Nice joust duffel bag. Let me just refresh this page, actually, because it might have a different stock value since I last did it now, 250. Okay. Right. So, let's have a quick look at the tables. Can you just refresh this data? It's a little bit large, but just refresh this. So we have the catalog inventory stock item here. It's enabled. The last ID is 13. Move on to the next table. That's the stock item. I'm just going to switch to this one here. Well, I've actually got one more record. So I've already... Yeah, let me just switch this out a second. I'm going to update it quickly. So let's start from afresh. Right, got 200 in stock. We've got 14 in this table. So if we start from this point, and then we go to the item table, you can see there's 200 in stock, and this is the bit where I'm going to do something really silly. Would somebody like to suggest a number for me? I want it to be in stock still, but any number you want. Somebody want to shout one out? That's the second time somebody's given me that number when I've done this. I wonder why. Shit. So 42, I'm going to commit that change. So we had 14. If we go back into the changelog table now, and I refresh the table, we have 15. I haven't touched Magento at all. It's just a MySQL trigger. Okay, so if we now, we just go over to this table, you can see it's still 200, it hasn't changed, it's same as it was before. So if we go back to I'm going to run the cron again. So obviously I don't have the cron running on my local environment, so I just run it via the command line. If we go back again, should now be up to date, 42. And if we go back to this table here, it's already updated for me in the background. It's 15 now instead of 14. So we're up to date. That's essentially how update on schedule works in a nutshell. If I go back to the front end, we should now have 42, and the full page cache entry has been cleared. That's essentially it. So there are a load of slides on here that are backups. We can cut through pretty much all of these. Quick note on this one here. So this is the XML file that this is in the indexer module for MView. This is just the cron task that gets run every minute, which runs a load of code. And then we get here. So when we run the cron, basically, we're getting the version IDs from the changelog tables. Magento's then checking which ones are out of sync, basically, and putting them into batches. And then it runs this action execute. And the action is basically defined by the indexer. So in this case, for our catalog inventory, this class is the action. So this is going to have the execute method run on it. And then about in Magento, it takes another 5+ methods abstraction to actually get it all run. But eventually, we got to where we got to. So with that in mind, we could go back to our debugging issue. Now we have the power to sort of see and look into the database, see if things aren't working as expected. I'm going to give you 2 scenarios, and I'm going to spoil it right away. Since Magento 2.3, these are both fixed, so that's good. But if you have older versions of Magento, it's still useful to know. And I'm sure there'll still be edge case scenarios. So yeah, the edge case scenarios I've seen mainly still are to do with complex product types. Simple products are fairly, very stable at this point, in my opinion. So if we go back to our example of the most important product in the world, it has an ID of 11. I decided that an Endeavour backpack sounded quite important. And I've added it to the sale category, which has an ID of 37. So they're logged in the changelog, in the dictionary table for catalog category product. And they've logged in the changelog table, all good. However, they've not appeared in the index table. In this scenario, and this used to happen quite a bit in older versions of Magento, earlier 2.2 and all of 2.0, 2.1, sometimes this version ID could get out of sync. So Magento does have what's the word I'm looking for? Changelog tables will actually get cleaned up at certain points, so they will get truncated essentially, but sometimes, and I've never found out exactly why, I'm sure it's in the depths of commits in GitHub somewhere, sometimes these version IDs didn't get reconciled. So because that says it's 247 and ours was number 5, we've got to save another 242 things before anything's going to get changed again, and none of those 242 things will get actioned. So yeah, in the past, the only way to fix that was to actually go into the database and change that number back to the auto-increment ID for the changelog table. So yeah, thankfully that's now fixed. Anytime this process runs, Magento will actually reconcile these now, so you do not have that issue. And yeah, earlier versions could be an issue. Other one I've seen, and again, now fixed, if an admin user went into a product and disabled it and then made changes to it, so they might have changed stock price, whatever else, and then saves it again and then re-enables it, some of those changes didn't come through at all until you did a manual reindex, or you had to change it again and get it logged again. Not much fun. But again, this is now fixed. There's actually a bit of a change between 2.2 and 2.3. It might be in the latest versions of 2.2, but I'm not 100%. But in 2.3, for definite, disabled products are now actually removed from the index tables, which is actually better because they don't need to be there in the first place. So if we disabled product ID 11, and then the reindex ran, ID 11 would just be removed from the index table, which reduces the amount of data, and it's much better, obviously, from that point of view. If you then re-enable them, then they'll get re-added and updated if things have changed while they've been disabled. Okay, just going to move on to a few really quick tips and tools. First one, there's a command called bin Magento index to status. What this will do is tell you if there's anything in changelog tables that hasn't been processed yet. That's quite a handy little tool. Save you having to dive straight into the database. Get yourself a good MySQL client. All the examples I've shown and the demo I just did was using Table Plus. It's great. There is our lovely hosts, Magento, have a cron module, which helps with cron performance, a few bug fixes, and you can run bin Magento cron execute if you want to manually run a cron record, which is pretty cool. There's also this, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce this guy's name because I'll probably make a right mess of it, but there's a cron job manager module. It's a bit like AOE scheduler for M2 if you were used to that in M1. But yeah, that'll let you manage crons and trigger them from the admin panel. If you absolutely need to run a manual reindex, this is the way I recommend to do it. So sometimes you might have to run a manual reindex for like the reasons I gave earlier. But if you run it this way, what we're doing is setting everything to update on save. We're invalidating everything, then we're reindexing, and then we're setting indexing mode back to schedule. So this will help potentially stop background reindexing running while you're running a full reindex. Okay, there's a few cheat sheets here. So these just show the dictionary, index tables, and that kind of thing. I'm not going to go through them, but they're there. I'll share the slides after. Finally, just a few what-abouts. What about flat catalogs? Well, actually, Magento have said not to use them for almost 2 years. So that's why I've not covered them. They have now officially said, it's in dev docs, as of 2.3.0, do not use them. So do not have any performance benefits anymore. What about URL rewrites? So in Magento 1, these are indexed. In Magento 2, they are not. They're only generated if you save a product or a category or a page. So if you do need to update them in bulk for some reason, there's a really good module there that's looked after by Gentos. I'll let you run it from the command line. Finally, I'll kind of skip over this, but there are some quite cool parallelization optimization tools now in the latest versions of Magento 2 that let you split the indexing. So if you've got high traffic, high performance, this really helps, and there's a good article there. So finally, wrap up. Should you use update and save? No. Should you reindex via the command line? No. And should you use update on schedule? Yes. Okay. But yeah, the main takeaway, if there's one thing to take away, is just to think before you reindex. I'm not saying never reindex, even on production. You might need to do it, but try and have a think. Try and debug it if you can, and try and get a long-term fix. So a bit of a summary. And I'm just going to wrap this up by saying that I actually feel that indexing with update on schedule now feels quite stable. It's a lot better than it was even a year ago. So yeah, there's far less edge use cases where things don't update. But yeah, just last disclaimer, please start refreshing the indexes. And as with yesterday, if you saw this yesterday, I've just updated this. So fear is the path to the dark side, fear leads to anger, anger leads to refreshing the indexes, and refreshing the indexes leads to flushing the cache, and then suffering. That's it. May the force be with you. Another quick plug for that. Have a look. It's an online tutorials thing, and that is it. Thank you.
All right. Who has a question for John? There we go.
Hi, John. I'm working for a merchant as an internal developer, and we frequently, on a daily basis, we have to import new product data into the database, and it's a lot. So we use an extension named Firebear import, the commercial version, 3.x, to do so. But sometimes the product doesn't show after the import. And Firebear, they does provide an option to reindex everything after the import, but it's very slow. And my solution, temporary solution, is that I created an observer to listen to one of these save after events, and force the reindex partially. But I'm not sure how can I, there are different parts of the full reindexing. So which part of the reindex, I can, take off the list, so to shorten the time?
It depends on the product data you're importing, to be honest. My first question would be is how much data you're importing and how much of it actually needs to be imported. Can you trim it down to just the data that you need to import, or just the products you need to import, or do they all have to be updated each day? Because that'll reduce the impact. Otherwise, it sounds like you've kind of taken the only other. You'd have to just work on a better strategy potentially. But yeah, if you're already kind of doing it once a day and doing it out of peak hours, that might actually be the best solution. It's not a perfect system, unfortunately. But yeah, in terms of reducing the index time, yeah, you could cut some of the other indexes out. To be honest, though, most of the product ones are the ones that take the time, and then I'm assuming you're going to need to update things like stock and price if you're importing all the product data, so there's probably not too much you can cut out. But it depends on the data that you want to update.
Got time for one more question. Can you put the last slide back up, John?
Trying.
Getting a screenshot. Anyone else have a question? All right, one more round of applause for Mr. John Hughes. Thank you, John.